I'm so mad at you.
What did I do?
I want to talk about this before we go to bed.
Can we talk about this in the morning?
No.
You're listening to Marriage Mania, where we are audacious, sagacious, and tenacious for the Lord to uphold godly marriages and to raise fervent children who are countercultural and stand for biblical truth.
Welcome back. I'm Tanya.
And I'm Michael.
And today we're going to talk about that exact same thing, being angry before you go to bed. And is that something sinful? Is that something that we should do? Is it okay? Like, how do we maneuver through that? And sometimes, I am mad. Sometimes I'm mad at you for something that maybe we didn't resolve, because I think most communication issues aren't resolved 100%. But sometimes, we go to bed angry, and not that we're super, super mad at each other, but we're upset about something that has either hurt us or we just did not get to discuss in the way that maybe I wanted to discuss or that you wanted to discuss. And so we go to bed. And there is a verse in the Bible that talks about this very thing. So Michael, why don't you tell us the verse so that we can kind of talk through that?
Yes, there's a verse, Ephesians 4:26, that talks about when you're angry, don't sin, and don't let the sun go down on your anger. So don't give place to the devil, being that, God talks about how our anger does not bring out the righteousness of God. And so a lot of times we say the most hurtful things that we want to take back later when we're angry. And we wish we could take them back, but we can't. And so this is talking about, when we're angry, don't sin, though. And we need to control our anger. And part of that is letting anger dissipate, right? That don't let the sun go down. That to me is just a poetic way of saying you got about 24 hours where God's giving you a little leeway to be a little angry and to stew over things a little bit. But then after that, you got to really start thinking, we got to let this go. We got to let the anger die down at least, because how can we talk about something if we're angry? That's like the worst time to have a conflict, when your emotions are high. Mm-hmm. So if you feel like your emotions are high, that's the time to take a time out. And I'm going to go for a walk, and I'm going to pray.
In the middle of the night.
Maybe, if that's what it takes, take a walk around the house and pray, and invite you to pray while I'm away. And maybe when we come back, emotions are down, and maybe we can address this in a different way. Or maybe we sleep on it and we discuss this in the morning, or we make an appointment when we're available. Are you free this Friday to talk about it? But I know that, a lot of people are like, whoa, wait a minute. I thought the Bible said that we have to deal with our conflicts before we go to sleep.
Well, let's be honest and real. Okay. I think most of the ladies here that are watching, or any couple, let's just be real. Sometimes we are mad and we want to stay mad. We want to stay mad, and that might linger on to the next day because we are hurt and we don't know how to address it. And sometimes we can go through a silent treatment. Sometimes we could shut down and not talk about that. And I say this because I have great experience in this. I can do that. I can get upset and angry and feel like I don't want to talk after the next day, or I'm still pondering it. And it's been, half the day has gone by, and sometimes I'm just still pretty quiet about it. And there's that elephant in the room where you just feel like, okay, I know what God's word says, but it feels that I need to be doing this. And of course, I am giving into the flesh, because as believers, we want to surrender to our flesh and really be the first one to ask for forgiveness and say, I'm sorry. But in reality, when it plays out, sometimes it does not come out that way. And so I'm just taking a realistic approach here, where you might get angry at night and you're just like, I'm going to go to bed and I'm so mad. And then you wake up the next morning and it's still so pressing on your heart, and you go about the day and you're trying to just overcome that, but you're still upset. And so we want to take that biblical approach of like, we do need to surrender that. We do need to let that go. And I'm speaking to the choir here because the little things that can upset us can really fester. And, sometimes they're so little, but sometimes they can be so hurtful. The little things can be hurtful. And you just want to be able to figure out, how do we address this? Not be so angry. We could say, okay, we can forgive each other, but it doesn't mean that we haven't resolved everything and we don't talk about it the next day. Like, you could still talk about it, but maybe there's already a forgiveness that has taken place for certain situations, or maybe it takes time to sit down, like you were saying, find time during the week, but don't let it linger too long, because if it does, then you're not really addressing the problem, and a week goes by, and then that could also fester the emotions of, like, my spouse does not care about what I feel, or it doesn't matter. It's not a priority. And so I think there's a balance here of figuring out the timing and figuring out how to address it. But also, if it's something really upsetting, I believe that it is okay. Like you were saying, not that God said in his word that you have a pass. Here's your free 24-hour pass. But there is that we need to make sure that we're reconciling in a way that we forgive each other, but there's still some unresolved issue that needs to be discussed so that the anger can settle down.
Yeah, and I like what you're talking about. It conjures up in my mind Matthew 18, where certainly there's an urgency if we had got an issue where God said, if you're bringing your offering to the Lord and you happen to remember that your brother has something against you, just put your offering to the side for a moment and go reconcile, go deal with that, go talk this out with your brother or sister in Christ. And so that was even a higher priority than giving your offering in the moment. So Jesus was really putting that on a high pedestal. It's so important to God, reconciliation. He wants to reconcile himself to us. That's why he sent his son Jesus down on the cross for us, for our sins, to reconcile with us. And he wants us to reconcile with each other. And that's very important. But Ephesians 4:26 is talking about our anger. It's talking about resentment. It's talking about, don't let the sun go down on your anger. Don't just let it build and just build this resentment. Deal with it in a way that is needed in order to let that die down. For some, it's like, well, I got to just deal with this right now. We need to talk this out. Well, if talking this out is just stirring up anger, then we need to take a time out and a break and let the anger die down, and then come back once our emotions are lower, and let's talk about this in a kind and loving way and keep our emotions regulated and keep our anger dissipated. So that's all about that. But the time out is not to just walk away and never revisit the discussion or whatever disagreement that we're having. It's just a time out. Then we got to make sure we come back when emotions are down, whether that's the next morning or we set an appointment to talk about this. I heard in one book, a couple had the technique of going to the library. If we got a disagreement that's just causing us to be heated, they set an appointment to meet at the library at a certain time, because for them, it worked. It kept them calm. It kept them talking silent. They're in public and they're supposed to be quiet. And so it kept their emotions down so they could talk it out in a calm and manner. And so whatever it takes to get our anger died down is what God is asking us to do.
Yeah, and I totally agree exactly what you're saying around, we need to tone it down a little bit and get ourselves back in the right mindset so that we're not hammering the point over and over and making things worse, like causing more fuel to go into the fire, right? But I also think that it is important that we do address it in a timely manner. Like, that's really, really important, just so that the other person, whoever feels offended, doesn't feel like the lack of importance of their feelings. And I think that's key and really important too.
Yeah, the important thing is to have grace. Just like I think God has given us a little grace with our anger. First of all, anger is not a sin. He says, be angry. He's kind of saying that emphatic in a way that's kind of saying, when you're angry, don't sin. So it's possible to be angry and not sin. There's things that we can have a righteous anger. There's things that should anger us. Somebody wronged us. It's okay to feel the feelings that we have. It's not okay to just unload those feelings on the other person in the moment in any old kind of way. We want to recognize what our feelings are, maybe even examine them for a second. Sometimes we can take a break and say, what am I feeling? Was I triggered in some way? Is my anger even justified? Is the level of it justified? Is this something, maybe I'm having an overreaction to this? Let's examine that. Why would I have an overreaction to that? What in my past or something that's offended me in the past that this other person has nothing to do with, but they triggered something in me that just that pushes my button. We all have buttons, right? And we know we recognize our button is pushed. We need to realize that doesn't give me license to just unload that on that person in the moment when it was pushed. It's like, whoa, my emotions just went from here to here. Let me step aside for a moment. Even if I have to tell the person, it's like, I need a moment. Just give me a moment. The other person needs to let you have that moment. And then, let that die down and then come back. This is what I was feeling, and this is why. And sometimes that's the next morning. For me, that often is. If an argument happens at right close to night when it's time to go to bed, that is not the time. I'm usually really tired, and that's not the time I know for me to have a discussion. I want to process it and think about it. Try to figure out what's going on with all these emotions that all of a sudden just flooded me and all these thoughts that flooded me. Let me try to separate all those and talk about it in the morning when things are fresh. I love there's a great acronym out there, HALT, like stop, HALT. Don't have any kind of disagreement discussion. If anybody is hungry, angry, it's late, or anyone's tired. It's the worst times to have a disagreement. Studies show that there's another rule by Dr. Schrader: don't have any kind of disagreement between 9 p.m. and 9 a.m. at night, because most of your bad arguments happen at that time. So because everybody's tired. I was a police officer, go to all kinds of domestic arguments right in the middle of the night, and it's like, why are y'all arguing now? Y'all need to sleep on this, 9. Right? And it's like y'all are arguing all night. This is not fruitful. And obviously the argument you're having is not bearing any fruit. You'll need to press time out on this and calm down. Somebody leave the house or something, go for a walk and then come back. It's not the time to have any kind of disagreement discussion when anybody's hungry, angry, it's late, they're tired, anybody's upset and they're angry, they're frustrated. Whoa, time out. Doesn't mean you leave the argument, never return to it, but you come back later when those criteria aren't there anymore. And that's when we can talk it out and give us time to pray about it. Give me time to examine my emotions. Give me time to examine my thoughts. Give me time to organize my thoughts, so I'm choosing my words carefully. Because I love another acronym, think before you speak. Is what I'm about to say true? A lot of our arguments are assumptions that aren't even true. We're angry about stuff that we're just assuming. So is it true? Is what I'm about to say helpful? It's going to help the situation. It's going to make it worse. Is it inspiring? Is it going to inspire the other person to seek peace? Is it even necessary to bring up? Or is it the Bible tells us that we got to let little things go. And is what I'm about to say kind? Above all, I'm going to say it in a kind way. It has to pass all those. That's my filter. And so when I'm about to get into any kind of confrontation discussion, I need to think before I speak, choose my words very carefully, and it needs to be true, helpful, inspiring, necessary, and kind. And I'm like, check. Then I say it. And sometimes I need some time to organize those thoughts so I can plan out a disagreement discussion and say it in a way that the other person can receive. And I especially want to start out very softly. Soft answer turns away wrath. Yeah. How can I say this in a very soft and kind way that the other person can receive? And more so, what questions can I ask to understand the other person's point of view? God says through James that we need to listen more than we speak. And so you can only listen more if you ask questions. We obviously have a disagreement here. Yeah. And instead of me just trying to persuade the other person to my point of view and they're doing the same, let me try to figure out what the other person's point of view actually is. Let me ask questions about what it is that you're saying, what it is that you're thinking. Let me make sure I understand what you're saying. Let me try to understand why you think that way. What's the reason behind why you come to this opinion? And just kind of draw that out. And when we gain better understanding of each other, then that's when solutions can present themselves.
That's so good. And it is so important that we know that we're on the same team. I think that is key, especially in a biblical marriage, in any marriage, actually, but especially one who is exalting Christ, a biblical marriage. We're on the same team. We're not trying to get, separated here because of a minor argument. And we have to make sure we renew our mind, because the enemy is wanting marriages to be apart. That's a wedge. That's an opportunity to pull each other in different directions. And so we really have to be prayerful and consider all the thoughts that come into your mind. What is untrue? Because there could be a lot of lies that come into your mind, or things like, well, he doesn't understand. Well, she doesn't understand. He's always starting this argument. She's always starting this argument. Just finding the negatives in the arguments versus, okay, let me rethink this. We are on the same team. I am upset. I do feel hurt, but he's not intentionally trying to hurt me. She's not intentionally trying to hurt me. We have to work through this together, like having a renewed mindset, because that's where the resentment comes in. That's where lies of the enemy come in to attack you, to try to pull you further apart in your marriage. And so those are really key things to be thinking about when you are kind of apart and trying to think through your arguments and how you can come together to resolve that. And it might not be resolved 100%, but maybe there's an understanding where you're like, okay, I realize I hurt you. I said this thing and I didn't really mean it. What I meant was this, and maybe that will hurt more, but like maybe the other person is trying their best to communicate with you. And through that process, you might get a little hurt. It might sting a little bit, but it's really important to say, okay, this is what I'm hearing you say, because I know I say that to Michael a lot. Like if there's something that's going on, I'm like, okay, I heard this. He's like, no, I wasn't saying that. I'm like, well, that's what I heard. He's like, I had nothing to say about that. Like that is totally off.
Gives me a chance to try again. Well, let me say it again, what I was trying to at least say.
And sometimes as women, I'm speaking for myself, but like as women, we want that lovey, compassionate, like, okay, I'm really sorry. And this is what we're going to try to do next. But sometimes when it may come across where it doesn't feel as compassionate, then we get quickly offended. Like, okay, you really don't care. And then that just starts to feel again. So we also need to understand our differences in how we communicate, because there are a little bit of gender differences. Like, I don't think that Michael's going to be like all lovey dovey. Like he will, but not to the extent of a woman would be. So there's just a difference there in how we communicate with our love language. And so that is really key to understand what your love language is. I know I like affirmation. So I like to know like that you're affirming, hey, I am sorry. And this is what I did on my part. And then I can, thank you. And I am sorry. So it really plays into the love language, understanding your spouse, learning your spouse, truly wanting to reconcile with your spouse, and making sure that you're renewing your mind. And it is okay if you have arguments. It is healthy and it brings further strength
when done in a healthy way.
Yes.
And so, yes, if we abide by certain rules of engagement that we have, if there's anything that we need to be an expert in when we're dealing with relationships, we need to be an expert in communication. We need to read on it. We need to listen to podcasts on it. There's certain rules in there, do's and don'ts, that we need to know and just follow to the T. No matter what we're arguing about, no matter how intense the issue, we will never break these rules. And
like the communication manual. Yeah. I mean, just has all the rules and the steps and everything with with us talking through that. So yeah, the communication manual.
Right. And one of the biggest ones, like you talked about, is we're on the same team. What's
We
the goal?
are.
The goal is not
We
for me to
are.
win the argument and you lose. If I win and you lose, the relationship loses and we all lose. The point is for the relationship to win. And that's what is key to gain understanding. I need to ask more questions than I'm speaking. I need to get to know you and why you think the way you think and what's causing, what emotions are you feeling? What are you thinking? And just understand what's going on completely. So that we can find a solution. If we have better understanding of the differences on how we're thinking and what's going behind, how we're coming to this conclusion, this is when solutions can present themselves. And so that needs to be our primary goal. I want the relationship to win. I want to gain as much understanding as I can for you. And like you talked about, was it John Gottman, the famous researcher out there, found that like 69% of our arguments are never solved.
Yeah.
They're perpetual. They're ongoing. Part of that is because I think we're not using very good problem solving, communication, and conflict resolution techniques, because we have not gained an expertise in this. We're just unloading our frustrations on the other person. We're not listening to the other person at all. So that's a big part of it. Another part of it, though, is we just have personality differences. We have gender differences. We have personality differences. We have value differences. And there's a certain part of this that I need to gain understanding of these differences and some acceptance that I need to have of these differences, especially if things that aren't wrong, they're just different. And I need to have acceptance of that. This is just a value that's, that you have, that I don't have. And we just have this difference and we need to have some understanding of that. And maybe there's a solution in there where we can compromise a little bit and have some kind of solution where, well, this time you get that and the next time I get the other thing, and it's we can compromise and come to some kind of solution that way. Sometimes there's no solution that presents itself. And it's just an ongoing, perpetual disagreement that we need to just gain understanding and figure out how to live with it to some degree, shape, or form without just arguing about it all the time in bad ways. It just hurts the relationship.
Yeah, I think that's a good point that you're making here. And, we just wanted to kind of talk about that verse, Ephesians 4:26, because it gets confusing. A lot of people feel very confused, like we've got to figure this out before we go to bed. And that's not necessarily the case. I think just keeping our mindset on the Lord, and it is hard. We have to retrain our mindset when we have arguments. Like I said before, we have to truly know that our spouse is not the enemy. The enemy is the one that's prowling around this earth to try to destroy marriages, to try to destroy everything that's around us. And so our spouse is not intentionally waking up. I can't wait until tonight so I can cause an argument with my wife or I can't wait to cause an argument with my husband. That is not like the
Sometimes
intention.
It can seem like that if we're going through a very difficult season.
Yeah.
At the moment, it can kind of seem like, my spouse seems to be my enemy at the moment and just seems to be trying to get
right. But we're on the same team. And also you talking about newlyweds too. Like if you happen to be listening to this is something that you kind of have to work through those first couple years and just getting to know your spouse. Like, when is the right time to have these conversations? Not at 10 o'clock, midnight. Those are not going to be the best times. Is early in the morning the best time? I don't know. Maybe that is for your spouse. I know for us, I hit the ground running and I'm like, I can't talk about this right now. So there has to be a good time frame to be able to have that conversation. So,
but the Ephesians verse 4:26 does not say that you have to resolve your disagreement before you go to bed. That is not what it's saying. So just to clear at least that point up, it is just saying don't let the sun go down on your anger. And oftentimes the best way to let anger die down is to stop a disagreement discussion, press pause on it. That all it's doing is stirring up anger. If all it's doing is stirring up anger, we need to press pause. And maybe we need to sleep on it. Maybe we need to make an appointment in a few days where we got plenty of time. Everybody's well rested. Everybody can gather their thoughts and we can discuss this in a calm and even tempered way, perhaps even at the library, if that's what it takes. Or if we need a mediator, if we need to get a relationship coach or a Christian counselor or a pastor to kind of mediate this discussion, that's okay. It's all right to reach out to people with issues that we're having in a marriage, and do so when the issues are smaller. Don't wait until they explode and get longer and bigger, and then they're harder to manage. And if the Song of Solomon says, deal with the foxes, the little foxes that destroy the vineyard. That's a poetic way of just saying, deal with the problems when they're smaller and easier to manage waiting until the problems get all entangled and huge and they're harder to manage. If anything is causing an issue in the relationship, it's breaking up the intimacy and the closeness in the relationship. We need to deal with it. We need to talk about it. We need to talk about it in an even-tempered way. If we're not able to do so just ourselves, we need to reach out to a pastor or a trusted Christian counselor to help mediate that discussion, and do so before it gets huge. Don't wait until it's like we're separated and we're headed for a divorce, and then now maybe we'll go to counseling. That's a last ditch effort. Reach out at any time. The pastor will tell you that, but for the love of God, for all that's holy and blameless in this world, reach out when the issues are small and they're easier to manage. And so that's the ideal time to do that. We got to deal with the foxes, the little foxes that are in our relationship. We don't have to do that before we go to bed. We can set an appointment even a few days later to deal with any disagreements, because a lot of our disagreements will be perpetual. Studies show that every relationship is going to have issues that we just can't figure out how to solve. It is a perpetual discussion that keeps coming up. Something triggers it, it blows up, and we've got to figure out how to manage that disagreement. And we've got to figure out how to manage it in a loving and caring way and not hurt the relationship. And sometimes we need to reach out to a trusted Christian counselor or pastor to help us mitigate that and mediate that and talk it out and come to some kind of resolution and understanding of each other's position, and be able to deal with it in a loving, caring way, and sometimes live with it in a loving and caring way.
Amazing. I think that was so great. And we do have an announcement we want to make at the end of this podcast, but I just want to say, for those that have these types of arguments at night, it is okay to sleep on it, forgive each other, sleep on it, and then talk about it the next day. Find that right time to be able to talk with your spouse so that you can address these things and bring strength into your marriage. So we want to share this announcement. We are going to be at the Teach Them Diligently conference, May 7th through the 9th, 2026 at Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. It's such an exciting time because it is a large homeschool convention. And I love how Leslie Nunnery just has a passion to really teach the next generation, teach them diligently, Deuteronomy 6:5 in every single way. And we love it because there's going to be so many speakers there, right? We've got our friends, Mickey and Will Addison, are going to be there. There's Ken Ham is going to be there. A lot of different individuals that are going to be at the conference. You should check that out.
And we'll be there. We'll be one of the speakers.
Yes. It's going to be 3 days. So, it's going to be an amazing time. And they've been doing the homeschooling convention for 14 years. And I'm just super excited. And these events have become like a highlight of the year for thousands and thousands of people. And so we are truly excited to be part of that. We're going to be speaking on marriage, and we've got a couple other things going on. So mark your calendars for May 7th through the 9th, 2026, Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, Teach Them Diligently conference. You can check out more details in the captions. And we hope to see you there.